Tethered Nation, you guys have heard me talk about the saddle setup, tethered saddle setup, the Predator platform for quite some time. This is the second full season that I've used it. I've killed out of it twice now, and really what it has helped me do, I figured instead of, I've given you guys specs, the weight, and how light it is, bulky free that it is, and so on and so forth, but I thought today I would give you a little bit of a testimonial. As, I will credit, and there's been a lot of people who've had a lot of influence on how I've started to hunt and how I've kind of evolved as a hunter. But I would say there's been no piece of equipment that's been more instrumental in me making that evolution than Tethered's saddle setups. The reason I say that is that, I'm a guy that works like a normal job like everybody else out there. And so when I go on hunting trips or I'm hunting, I have limited time to get stuff done. So I typically want to hunt more aggressively. And that's something I've challenged myself with the past, year and a half, is to just, to be more aggressive and don't lay back. And the saddle setup has really helped me do that because I've spent much more time with boots on the ground scouting than I ever have in years past. And that's really because I'm not carrying a bunch of bulky stuff into the timber with me. And so I don't mind. It's not a hindrance to carry my saddle setup. And that way, when I find fresh sign, I can get into the tree and I don't have to leave and come back and drop scent. If once I see it, I'm in the tree hunting it. I'm not finding it, setting up a stand, taking the time to do that, then leaving and coming back and hunting it the next day. I'm literally getting into the tree and hunting it at that moment. And I can't say that if I was using any other setup other than a saddle setup, specifically Tethered's gear, that I would be making the same strides I'm making now and becoming a more aggressive and a more mobile hunter. So if this is something that you're interested in, if you want to challenge yourself to be more mobile, more aggressive, and go find deer instead of letting the deer find you, then I would suggest that you go to tetherednation.com and check out all their saddle gear. I guarantee you, if you get into it, you won't be disappointed, and you'll probably become an addict like me. This podcast is brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm actually having a little bit of Skull Brew coffee this morning while I record this. If you're not aware of what Skull Brew Coffee Company is, it's a business that my wife and I started. In order to give back more to conservation, we roast premium coffee, and it ships out within hours of roasting, guaranteeing that you will get the freshest coffee available. The kicker is that we donate 10% of our proceeds back to conservation. You choose where the donation goes at checkout. Check us out at skullbrewcoffee.com, and let's do some good together and help protect wild places one cup at a time. Visit skullbrewcoffee.com and pledge your support of conservation today. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 160. Today I'm joined by Johnny Stewart, a Pennsylvania mountain buck and public land savage, so stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. We've had a little bit of unseasonably warm weather this past weekend, which probably put a little bit of a damper on any of you guys out there that are still holding tags, trying to fill some late season tags here, at least in Pennsylvania specifically. I'm not sure what the weather looked like elsewhere, but it was a warm one. It was, I think, mid-60s, maybe even got close to 70 on Saturday, which I'm sure wasn't great to get deer up off their feet. But I wasn't necessarily so broke up about it because I had some family or some really close friends in town, so I wasn't able to get out and do any hunting. So for me, unfortunately, I think it's looking more and more like my season is starting to really, really wind to an end. The season closes here in PA, I think, in the next 2 weeks. I don't have a calendar in front of me. I think it's the 25th of January, I think, is when it officially closes out by me. So I possibly will be able to get maybe one, maybe two more hunts in. But really starting to turn my focus toward scouting and making some preparations for next year. I've hit the timber once to make that effort, but more so just talking to some buddies that I'm going to spend some time with hitting the timber this winter and spring to kind of learn some new pieces and expand my opportunities and find some locations where maybe trail camera setups would be good. As I'd mentioned, in previous podcasts. I'm looking to expand my territory, and I've used a lot of the time, late season to make that happen, just because I don't have a lot of great late season setups. But we're looking to remedy that. If I find something that looks huntable and good, I will certainly hunt it. But really starting to do my homework for next year. I always like to start with maps. So, that's kind of where I'm at right now, is spending a little bit of time online, looking at Onyx and looking at some of the public pieces around me that maybe I haven't hit before, or maybe I have hit in the past, but just at a very high level and didn't really spend a whole lot of time. The way I'll start with that is, put some boots on the ground, try to locate some sign from this past year, and then probably shed hunt the properties too. I'm admittedly not a great shed hunter, so those trips usually turn into scouts as well. And if I happen upon a shed at the same time, then that's just gravy on top. But with that being said, I think I mentioned in the last podcast, I actually found a shed already this year. So one thing I am looking forward to, though, is maybe getting out and doing a little bit of waterfowl hunting here before time runs out on that. So that'll be the next kind of mission will be that. I won't have a whole lot of time for that, but it's always a nice way to kind of round out the season before we get into the long period of not having any whitetail hunting in our future. For those of you who are seasons are closed, that's kind of you're living that reality already. But that doesn't mean there's not a lot of whitetail stuff still kind of going on even outside the timber. I know the ATA was this past week. Had some buddies out there. I didn't go this year. I have some other travel obligations here in the month of January that I had to kind of prioritize. So I wasn't able to make it to ATA. From what I understand, there were some cool things that came out. I know I had mentioned, I think in the upfront of my podcast last week, that Tether's going to have some new stuff coming out, and they didn't disappoint. They have the new Phantom saddle that has been announced or launched. I don't know that it's up on their website yet. The last time I kind of looked, it wasn't there yet. So I'm sure they're going to have that up in the not so distant future. If you've not looked or checked any of that out, I would definitely hit their YouTube page to get a sense of what that is and what all that entails. They've done a lot of cool stuff to kind of upgrade the Mantis, which I've used for the past couple years. I'll be rocking the Phantom. Hopefully, I may actually able to get maybe 1 or 2 hunts here in these last couple weeks of late season in a Phantom. And if I'm able to do that, then I'll give you guys, of course, a full report on how that kind of works and my thoughts on it. But looking at the advancements that they've made are pretty cool. I think one of the things people are always looking for whenever you're trying to become more comfortable on a saddle or whatever, a lot of what will potentially dictate that might be your bridge length or where you're setting your tether height, and sometimes your tether height isn't necessarily always able to set exactly where you want it. And so they've remedied that with an adjustable bridge, which is really cool. Still using AM steel because AM steel is just super light and incredibly strong, which makes great material for a bridge. So that was one of the things that they advanced. The other thing is that this new saddle is kind of like a one size fits all or one size fits most, which is super cool. I think everything from like a 24-inch waist all the way up to like a 40-inch waist, which is super cool because a lot of the questions people would get would be what size. Or what people would ask would be, what size saddle do I need to wear? I'm, this waist size, what should I get? So they kind of took the guesswork out of that. And then the other thing they did was there was, I think some folks may have mentioned on social, in terms of, avoiding hip pinch and so forth. One of the things is, of course, how long is your bridge and where you're setting your tether height. But the other thing is where you position the bridge itself on the loops attached to your saddle. Like if you position them forward, does it ease the tension on your hips if you position it back? So they actually created like little slots within those loops, those bridge loops on your hips, to move your tether into different locations or different positions around your hips. That'll kind of add additional comfort. So they've really kind of listened to all the things that people who are hunting out of saddles were experiencing, and those who maybe were experiencing or had trepidation about trying saddle hunting based on wanting not sure how comfortable they'd be able to get their setup to be. And so they've addressed all those things this year, it seems like. So I'm looking forward to spending some time in this new saddle and giving you guys a heads up as to what my thoughts are on it. But with that, I don't really have any additional updates as far as hunting goes. So I think with that, we'll just kind of get ready to jump into this week's show. Got a really cool show for you. I've got my buddy Johnny Stewart on. If any of you out there know who Johnny Stewart is, you know that he is a public land mountain buck, just absolute savage. Travels a lot out of state, hunts a lot of different places. He's a guy who typically likes to target a mature deer and get after it wherever that might be. or if he doesn't have anything that's really, you know, in that caliber where he wants to focus all of his time on, he will, of course, you know, target the best group of bucks, and maybe he might have, you know, 1, 2, maybe tops 3 that he's kind of looking at, and that will be his, you know, those will be his huckleberry for the year, so to speak. I've been wanting to have him on for a while. You know, just we have a couple, you know, mutual friends that are, you know, that we're really good friends with, and I talk about this in the podcast. You know, we kind of struck up a friendship online through a couple. You know, he's good buddies with Bo Martonic and Greg Litzinger, and so, you know, I'm of course, you know, good buddies with those guys. And so he and I kind of struck up a friendship online just over social media and stuff like that. And he was one of the guys I talked to probably the most while I was in Iowa. You know, my struggles there were, you know, thoroughly discussed, so no need to beat that dead horse here. But he was, you know, very encouraging and stayed in touch with me during that whole trip, which was super cool. You know, that's the one cool thing about, I think, hunters and bow hunters maybe specifically, especially bow hunters maybe that, you know, are getting after it on public lands, because a lot of times you run into this, you know, similar challenges and so forth, and you can kind of commiserate with each other, or at least understand what each other is going through. And he had a lot of words of encouragement for me while I was out there, which was super helpful. We talk about that a little bit in this, but he and I spoke for a good while. I think it was close to 2 hours. And so as I'm kind of putting this podcast together, I think I'm going to have it in 2 sections, just because really the first section of what we talk about really is, you know, public land hunting, aggressive public land hunting, and with a little bit of sprinkle in of mountain buck hunting in public land scenarios. And then the second half of our conversation really kind of leans more toward leans more toward late season hunting, specifically as it relates to public land and things you might look for late season. So to keep it kind of compartmentalized, I figured I would kind of chunk these into kind of two bits and pieces. One last bit of housekeeping before I let you guys go. If you haven't yet, and if you're interested in learning more about my saddle setup specifically, if you're thinking of getting into it, I have a YouTube video that is on the Truth from the Stand YouTube channel where I outline all of my essential saddle gear, how I'm using it, what I'm using on any given hunt when I walk into the timber. So if you've not checked that out yet, head over there and check that out. You can find that in the link in my Instagram bio, or just go to YouTube and find Truth from the Stand. It'll be there. So with that, we'll go ahead and get cracking and get Johnny Stewart on the line. As always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I have on a guest that I've been wanting to have on for a little while. If you're not following him and don't know who he is, I suggest that you get in the know. I kind of refer to him whenever I'm talking to Greg Litzinger as the savage from out around the Pittsburgh area, but he is no other than Mr. John Stewart. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Clint. Thanks for the intro, man.
Yeah, man. Well, dude, it's funny because I knew of you before I ever had a chance. I mean, you and I started talking just online and stuff like that because we had a couple mutual friends. Mm-hmm. And I think the first time that I learned of you was actually through our buddy Bo Martonic. You know, and I know you were on, you were on his show. And then I know, you know, last year you guys went and did a big scout and stuff like that together. And then you and Greg actually went and hunted together. And of course, you know, I'm good buddies with Mr. Litzinger and stuff like that. And so, you know, I learned a little bit more about you as I went, and just, you know, you're a diehard hunter, get after it on public land, and once I learned a little more about you, I was like, all right, this is a guy that I got to start talking to, and because it feels like we're cut from the same cloth. So I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. I appreciate being on it.
For sure.
Anytime I have a chance to talk deer hunting, I'm all for it.
I know, right? I know. It drives my old lady kind of crazy because I will literally pick up anywhere at a restaurant if someone's into deer hunting and willing to talk about it. It's like game.
She's like, you don't even know that guy. Yeah, but we hunt the same areas. You know, just start.
Exactly.
Good.
So before we dive into, you know, what we're going to talk about a lot today is, you know, John's well known for his, you know, prowess of hunting public land. We're going to dive into a little bit of late season too, just because, you know, in all honesty, that's the time of year we're kind of sitting in. But it's also something that, you know, in the last podcast, if anyone listened, you know, Chad and I touched on it a little bit. And late season is one of those things where, you know, I hunted a lot of late seasons on private. In the last several years, I've shifted to hunting all public. and it's just a little bit of a different animal. And so I'm still kind of getting my bearings about me in that. But before we jump into all those things, man, if you wouldn't mind, give the folks at home that are listening a little bit about Johnny Stewart, where you're from, where you grew up, and how you started hunting.
Yeah, definitely. I'm from Southwest PA, probably 20 minutes southwest even of Pittsburgh. And where I grew up, it's kind of coal mine towns, some small dairy farms. So where I started hunting, it was kind of private land, but it wasn't private land to where it was posted up. It was kind of anybody in town hunted. So to me, growing up, I started bow hunting probably 13, 14. But to me, a large deer buck was probably 120. I mean, that was huge. Around where I grew up, it was yearlings, 2-year-olds. You know, I know the guy up the street, I was probably 12. He shot like 125-inch on a local farm, dairy farm, and it was just like I was in awe, and it's still a great deer.
Right.
But that's where I grew up, and that's where what was big to me, and I kind of look back at it as who I am today. It's kind of like I like using an analogy. That's kind of like I grew up. It would almost be like someone that maybe grew up with money, where they took maybe that size deer for granted. Maybe someone that against nothing against anybody where you grew up, and you got a hand of cards you're dealt, and that's how you live. That's how you play your cards. But maybe if I grew up in Illinois or Iowa, maybe 125, 130, 140 would be just like,
right.
But where I grew up, it was like, wow, you rarely see that.
Right.
And it kind of sparked me and drove me, and I kind of, in the last few years, I started hunting public land to try to get back to that, because I did take bigger animals on private land, and I want to, get back to that 120-inch, being wow,
right.
to where, and if you grew up with larger animals around you and seeing bigger bucks, maybe where you lived, you had them, if you were in the Midwest states or wherever, and it'd be kind of like, it wouldn't be like a goal. You wouldn't have something to strive for, because you see big animals everywhere. Maybe getting one wouldn't be so maybe your deer hunting would be something you took for granted.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of, I'm glad I grew up that way. That's what made me driven. And I still today kind of, I still believe 125-inch deer. So that's why I go to public land to try to, and I set my goals higher to where, and I might not shoot a deer with my bow. Like I shot one this year, but I might not shoot a deer if I'm looking for a certain animal 2-3 years. I don't, and I always tell people, it's like, well, at least you got to hunt every year if you didn't kill a deer. But I'm chasing that bigger animal, because when I do get them, I want it to be like when the neighbor guy shot 125. I was like, wow,
right.
That's what I'm looking for that challenge.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, man, because I know, and we'll get to your Iowa trip here, because I know you're getting ready to head out to Iowa here. But it's like you said, like I grew up in PA too, and I actually my dad came up from the Carolinas to visit a couple weeks ago, and he had the first rack buck I ever shot. He had mounted. Now it's nothing to write home about. It's just a little basket 6, PA basket 6 that I shot when I was probably like 14 or whatever. But I wanted that mount in the house, because it was the first one that had some bone on it, and it's just funny because growing up, like that was a decent deer. You know what I mean? Like if you saw one of those deer, in the area that I grew up, it was like, oh wow, that's rack buck. You didn't see those all the time. And so now when I travel places, like I just went to Iowa this year, and you see some of the caliber of animals that are out there, and it's like, and I don't take any of it for granted, I guess I should say. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where if a deer gets my heart pumping, like I don't really pay attention to the size of the antlers. I try not to, at least. And if it gets me excited and makes me want to shoot it when it walks in, then I'm gonna shoot it. That's kind of how I guess I operate. And I guess in some ways, man, it would be great to live in Iowa or where out Kansas, and hunt big deer and have that caliber of deer. But sometimes I'm kind of like, I think to your point, I think I'm kind of glad I grew up where I did, because I have an appreciation for when I see that caliber of animals. Like it doesn't get old. to put it that way.
Yeah, we're the same in that respect. That's what makes us hard hunters. Because we don't see them big deer all the time, and it's like when you see one near an Iowa, even around here, it's like, oh, and it's still like, man, like it's still 130 or whatever you're on, especially on play. Man, that's a good deer. So that kind of, then it never gets old, and you can keep hunting it, because if you kind of like maybe shot the biggest deer, and you just kind of, to me, you'd be like every year you shoot the big one. If you had like a private or whatever, which is great. I'd enjoy having my own place too one day or whatever. But maybe for me, it'd be like kind of, maybe you get stale a little bit, and you would have to just change your goals. It wouldn't be like, and then you might, to where, like I said, I don't get a deer. Sometimes there's 2 years I go and I'm like, well, at least I got to hunt through the whole season and watch from beginning, all the way through late season. And you learn a lot, because you're still out there hunting and scouting, and everybody's kind of done. And so, late season, like you said, is definitely a great time. So
I've enjoyed late season typically. Now, this was back whenever I was hunting, some family farms and stuff like that, was because all the older guys who hunted the farm, like from the family, would basically stop hunting right after, the end of bow season, essentially. They would hunt gun season for like a day or two, and that'd be about it. And so then all late season, I basically had the property all to myself, and so I actually had the best encounters on that particular property ever during late season. I would never see decent bucks like in bow range during the season. And then once late season hit, I would usually, if I hunted, say I hunted there was one specific deer I was hunting, and like the one year that just comes to mind, I hunted him 4 times after Christmas, and I had an encounter with him 3 times, I couldn't catch up to him all, the other times of the year, just because of the amount of pressure that was on the property and all the folks that were hunting it and stuff like that. And so I've grown to like late season, and I usually am holding the tag in late season in Pennsylvania, just because, my job, I can really only hunt weekends, and then I take my rut trip either to Ohio or whatever state I'm going to travel to. And then when I get back, like, it's pretty much all over here for rut for the most part. And so then I'm basically waiting for late season to come in to try to fill a tag. So that's why I'm trying to get better at late season hunting, because a lot of times it ends up turning into scouting for me versus hunting, because I'm really starting to prep for the next year, and I'm trying to get out of that habit a little bit. But I know you mentioned you took a deer this year. So how's your year been so far?
Pretty good. I and my newer, kind of like you said, Clint, you work a lot and you don't have the time now. Years ago, I didn't work as much. I have my own business, and it kind of dictates when I can hunt. Mm-hmm. So lately, I think I had 5 days, 6 days in PA to hunt, and I spent about 5 days in Ohio, where in the past, when I worked for my other employer, I said, hey, I need to be off from October to December. Right. That's what I told him. And I was able to hunt, but now I changed how I hunt, because I have an excavation business, and it's kind of, business is good, and weather's still nice in November, so I get that first week of November, and then I was down Ohio for 4 days, and I went up to New York and did a little gun hunting. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a lot of time, so like my new motto now, and I'm learning, is scout more, hunt less.
Right.
I find I'm always, and because I know my time is limited, I'm scouting right up till the day I kill my deer. I'm still scouting, because things are always changing from early season, pre-rut, rut. I mean, it could be hot, and in the next minute it could be so cold. Right. So I always have them cameras out. But I was able to start. I started my hunting this year. I think I went out first day just to get out, but and I ran cameras. Probably, I don't know, maybe 6, 8. I don't know what I had, 10, 5 or whatever, but I had them out. But these are places I hunted in PA. It took a few years to learn a place. It's not just like, hey, I just picked a spot and I dropped a finger somewhere on a map and I said, oh, I'm going to hunt here this year. I'm going to just scout this summer, and then, and that's going to kill deer. Like, I got to know And over the years, all my scouting, and when I used to hunt from October till, January, I was doing a lot of scouting then, and I just compiled so many hours of different states, and just I got my brain's full with different areas, and every year places change a little bit. Maybe you got a clear cut, like the place I hunted this year. It was a clear cut 5 years ago when I found it, maybe 2 years old. And now it's grown up, it's thick, and just things change slowly. So every year you got to rescout all these areas, or at least year to year, you could just throw camera. Oh, I know this is a good area. You get a camera. So that's kind of what I did this year.
Right.
I just kind of had a spot that I hunted a few years back, and I got to know it. And I know where the hunters are. I know where the deer want to be. So I would put cameras out in random areas that I knew where deer were. And I just kind of kept checking them cameras periodically, and kind of, okay, now it's time to strike. So I think it was being in November, and I was hunting up northern PA. And that's another thing. You got to kind of scout that way, because like you and me, we don't live right there where all that public land is. I got to travel 2 hours or 5 hours or 10, 12 hours. So yeah, I had cameras running this summer and checking them. And then I think it was like the first week of November, I said, well, kind of hunting to me, these whitetails kind of is like, it's like a puzzle that you get. But here's how my take on it is that, say you get the box with 500 pieces in it. To me, it's like the picture's not on the box.
Right.
So
that's a good analogy.
You only got, there's 500 pieces, but you only got 10 pieces. It's like, because you don't have the whole puzzle. You just got a few pieces. And so you put them few pieces on there, and you got to guess and think, use your brain, because that's what it is when I'm in the woods. I'm always thinking, and asking myself questions. So it's like, I got these 10 pieces. I'm trying to see the big picture,
right?
And sometimes them 10 pieces are all you get, or maybe you keep, because you don't get all 500 pieces. You'll never get it. You don't know what that, unless you can radio call her or something. That'd be neat. So yeah, that's how I kind of look at it. You're trying to find the picture on the box. So every time I walk in the woods, I'm always thinking. So, when I travel to different places, when I went to Iowa last week, I drove out just to put a dozen cameras out and drove home. It was a 3-day deal. I drove out, and the whole way, I don't even turn the radio on. I'm thinking all the scenarios. Mm-hmm. And there's places out there on that public land that I've hunted, and I'm jumping. Okay, I'm going to go here. I remember there's acorns here. There's a good bedding here. Da, da, da. And EHD hit in a couple areas. So I had about 6 places I hit in 10 hours, and I dropped 2 cameras, two. And I turned around, get in my truck, and drove home. But, getting back to like this season. So yeah, like the first week of November, I did. And I don't, sometimes it's real cold. Sometimes I don't get out there before daylight. I think I'm getting out there before daylight's good, because sometimes deer shut their brains off to humans walking in the woods before daylight. I've walked up on deer just like that, they associate humans with danger daylight,
Right.
But then sometimes I feel like sometimes I don't get in there till 8 or 9, but whatever. So yeah, I spent 10 hours in a tree in Pennsylvania this year, and I shot about 100, maybe 140 inch 8-point, and I missed a 150 incher, a 10-point 2 days before that. So it was a good season, but in the past I might have hunted more, but I'm evolving and I'm growing to where, and then each time you go in the woods, Clint, you're sent, like we talked about, right, when you were I was following you when you were out in Iowa, and you go in hard 4, 5, 6 days, 8 days, and you're going to start slipping up, because you can't keep that, mentally and physically. That's tough to do everything perfect, get to your tree, be scent free, don't spook. You got all these things when you're going to your stand that is draining on you, and like, I remember texting you, said, hey, take a day off, drink a beer, get up, sleep in, actually deliberately do that. So then you kind of, and then sometimes you'll kick yourself, I need to get out there, but you need that time to, whether it's wash your clothes or sleep in, think about it, or just take a walk, check a new area. Because, the most recent sign is the best sign. You might see it and get up in a tree, but, and I'm learning that more is, I guess, my new motto. I scout more and hunt less because of my my job and because it works.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm not bragging that I put 10 hours in a tree this year and shot one and missed one.
Right. Yeah.
I was bragging, but it's like, but then again, I'm talking about places that I've been. I spent hours. I studied maps, and you know, I would shed hunt it, and it's just it all comes together. And I, over time, I kind of you almost become the deer. You know, and people talk about like scrapes and rub lines and all, you know, different terminology. And when I was younger, I used to read books, and I would like outline articles, and I thought it was like a black and white. There was an answer. I wanted a big buck. I thought it was like, do this, stand here, you're going to kill a deer. So I would like read all these articles. And I remember I was like, man, I gotta find it. I remember, I don't know why, when I was younger, I built this wooden tree stand. You know, it was on a trail going to the field. You know, okay, they go from the bed to the field. Like that was beating my head.
Right.
And I sat along the heaviest trail that I found. I didn't see a deer walk on it. I seen a deer down in the woods. Like, what's happening? They're supposed to be on this trail, coming on this trail. This is what I learned. Right. You know, but the deer was down there milling on browse and acorns. But anyways,
yeah,
it's like,
I think you said a couple things there that I thought was really cool. You know, you talked about how you changed up how you hunted. Well, first, let me say this. Let me back up for a second and just say, you know, thanks, and how much I appreciated the dialogue we had while I was out in Iowa. Like, because I actually probably was talking to you more than just about anybody else on the entire trip. You know, going back and forth, and I remember when you sent me that text and said, "Hey, just take the morning off and relax. Just get out of your head." You know, and I did, and I kind of set a new plan and went and scouted, and you know, the rest is history. I ended up killing a deer. But a lot of it was doing exactly what you're talking about. And that was one of the things that I was forced to do going out there, because I didn't know much about the areas I was hunting. Is I just had to scout every day, and I'd find hot sign, and I'd set up, and then I'd hunt it that evening. You know, when I found it, I'd hunt it through the evening. And then if the wind was right, I would come back and hunt it in the morning, since I knew how to get in and out quietly, you know, since I walked to it in the daylight. And then I would hunt it for a couple hours in the morning, and if nothing moved, or I didn't see anything that I wanted to see that was what I was looking for, then I would just pull my stuff and I'd move on, and I'd just start walking again. You know, and that was kind of what I did every day. But the one thing that you mentioned that I thought was a really cool analogy was that, you know, you get a 500, you know, hunting bucks. Yeah. It's a 500 piece puzzle that you get, but there's no picture. I thought that was just like such the right way to say it, because that's so true. Like, you've got this puzzle, but you have no clue what it looks like. And I think the thing that people make the mistake of when they see someone like you know, who's an accomplished, you know, public land hunter, or if they're thinking of the guys from like the Hunting Public, or a Dan Enfalt, or a John Eberhart, or just name guys who are known for getting it done, right? Are known for being like good, like whitetail hunting strategy guys, right? It's like everyone thinks they walk into the woods and know exactly what's going to happen and how things are going to play out. And once they learn a spot, they can start to predict that stuff. But like, they're the same as everybody else. Like, if they walk onto a new piece and haven't spent several years working it, like, it's a blank puzzle for them too. You know what I mean? They don't have all the answers.
I'm into like public land hunting. You know, I've hunted it throughout my life, but probably the last 8-9 years, it's strictly, unless I might go shoot a doe on my buddy's farm or something, it's pretty strictly. And now I compiled. And like I said, in the beginning years, I didn't work all winter. Mm-hmm. So I did what you did, Clint. I took these spots, whether it was Iowa, Illinois, Ohio, wherever I was hunting, and I would scout and hunt. And I did that for 8 years, scout and hunt. So that's why this year, you know, and when I went out to Iowa, I drove 12 hours, and I put 12 cameras up in 10 hours, you know, and then I jumped in my, you know, and I slept I drove out, slept, and come back. But it was like, all them years I've been out there, maybe, I don't know, 5-6 times, I'm thinking, and all them years being out there. So I have all this knowledge, these good areas that I don't have to do what you did this year. I'm going right, like I went right between gun seasons. I went out and I put them cameras out, you know, but it takes time to learn them areas. Right. And if you get a deer like your first, second time, and that's good, like what you did. And I wanted to tell you, congratulations. I didn't tell you in person. But that's good, because you took a new area, and people say, you know, people look at like a pinch point on you know, onyx or the topo. Mm-hmm. that's a start in the right direction. But till you get out there and you walk, maybe someone's hunting there. Maybe who knows what's going on there? Maybe the deer you're looking for doesn't exist, or whatever. So you have to get out there and walk.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was that, you know, I can't say that there was any one setup that I had that would have been like, you know, classic, go into a place you're not familiar with, you go sit in a pinch somewhere where deer are going to likely funnel through. I didn't really have any of those setups. Like I literally just went and kind of took the method of, you know, I was like, I'm going to go either kill a deer or bump a deer. One of those two things are going to happen. And I was like, and if I bump it, that's fine, because then I'm going to know that there's deer there. You know, and that was kind of my whole philosophy. And then once I bumped the deer from an area, you know, one or two or whatever the case was, then I would bust out my map and look and be like, all right, if I'm a deer living in this area, and I would look at what time of day it was too. Was it the morning? Was it the later in the afternoon? Like, were they likely getting up and browsing, or was it the time of day that they should be bedded? You know, so I tried to figure out, were they up, or were they in their bed, you know, so to speak, and try to figure out how close to bed I was. And then I would look and say, all right, what's their morning time pattern going to be here? Like, where are they likely going to come from in the morning if they were coming back here? And then if it's the evening, where are they likely headed to? And then I would look and say, all right, well, these are probably the options that they're going to use. Here's a destination food source. I know I passed some oaks over here, so they're probably browsing over there. You know, and so I started figuring out, like, okay, now that I know there's some in this area, what are the things that might be, you know, useful to me to set up on, you know, that I can, you know, guarantee myself that they're going to get close enough to get a shot opportunity. You know, and so that's kind of how I played that whole trip, which was maybe a little counterintuitive, because it wasn't like, you know, I was more so, honestly, man, I was more so working the wind, and the terrain was kind of secondary.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, definitely.
And that was,
I know,
that's kind of my move.
You could use a lot more of the wind for some of the mountains around here. I don't even care about the wind, because you can't play it all the time. But, and what you did was right. Last year I was in Ohio as a hard hunted piece of property, and I went in about November 10th, 11th. It was right after the season ended in Pennsylvania, and I went down there, and I went in about prime time, 5 o'clock. And I just run through the woods, not run, but I moved fast through the woods.
Right.
And I haven't been there, and I said, I'm going to go. And that guy's hunted hard, and I could see where a guy's been putting a stand on this tree. He's been walking every day. Okay, I'm going to eliminate this. And I just kept walking till I jumped a deer. I said, oh, guy's been hunting here for the last week or two, and deer would be on to them like white on rice. And it's like, okay, there's a deer here. There's a reason for it. So this is like a spot maybe I would hunt. I would, you know, and I just eliminated so much scouting, everything. Just go through the woods until you find a deer.
Yeah.
Because not even believe when you're on public land, they live with humans. It's not where they're gonna. And here's another analogy. I now that I am scouting more and hunting less, the worst thing, and a lot of some guys like, oh, there's a guy hunting my spot. He's hunting my deer. Most of the people I might see parked where I'm hunting. In my experience, none of them people ever killed the deer I was after.
Right.
It was like they're ruining it, and I'm using them as a pawn. I'm utilizing, okay, because it's like I feel like when you're hunting, that's the worst time for you. I mean, how do I want to say this? When you're out there hunting, you're up in a tree, and whether you know it or not, you're putting scent out. Well, you know you're putting scent out, even though the wind's going this way. You know you're putting scent out, and the worst thing for an animal that living there is to smell you, but not know where you're at. If the wind's swirling, they just get, to me, they get freaked out. Like maybe the wind's swirling, they catch a smell of you, and it's like, to me, that's predator right there. He said, "This, you're hiding, ambushing him, it or whatever," and to where if you're hiking through the woods, you're giving them the sense they could see you, they could probably maybe smell you and see you, and it's like, okay, I know he's not. I mean, he might be a threat, but I got all these. You know, maybe you're not showing like you're a predator, but as soon as you get up in that tree or as soon as you ambush and the scent disperses, that's why I hunt less, because you're hunting that spot, putting scent, and it's just scaring them. To me, like, my analogy to that is, I thought about it. It's like, say, Clint, if I told you or your old lady, if you live in a small town, maybe there's 1,000 people in your town, like, hey, I knock on your door, I'm a policeman. Hey, there's a murderer running the streets here. There's a, like a serial killer. You'd be like, holy shit.
Right.
You'd be freaked out. You'd be like, your old lady be freaked out, getting a gun, sitting by the bed, looking out the windows and shit. But if I told you, I said, or you seen on the news, hey, there's a killer in Chicago. You'd be like, all right, well, people can die in Chicago every day. You're going to go to sleep. To me, the analogy is like, that's like a deer. He smells you, but he cannot see you. And it's just like, he's freaked out,
Right.
And everybody hunts. And you're just freaking them out, to where, the analogy would be, like I said, the guy, the murderer in Chicago. It's like, hey, he's way over there. It's like, when he sees you, hears you, you jump, and he's like, okay, run a little bit. When I used to take my dog, when I had a dog, I'd take him all the time, because it was just, oh, there's a guy walking his dog.
Right.
And meanwhile, you're soaking up into like a sponge. You're like, oh, okay, I can see where I know it. Then boom. A lot of times I'll go in at nighttime and hang it, stand and stuff like that. But yeah, like, I am starting to hunt a lot less, because you're just putting that scent. I don't use Zonix or anything. It's like, I'm trying to give the deer a chance. Like, right. I want that challenge. I just keep scent free and stuff like that. But
yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah.
it's the classic, like, first sit, best sit, right? It's like, I don't want to let them know that I'm a threat until I am a threat. That's
you're
you know what I mean? And it's funny you mentioned about the dogs. I'm actually getting ready to go scout tomorrow morning, and I'm taking my dog with me, because I kind of thought about the same thing, to where I was like, you know what? It's gun season's over. The woods have been beat up. I'm just going to go out and take the dog, and we're not going to try to be quiet. We're going to go out and do some late season scouting, try to figure out some of these. There's a bigger piece near me that I want to try to start to figure out, because that was the other thing I kind of learned on that trip to Iowa, was that, I really want to hunt bigger pieces of public, because I want to be able to cover ground. And a lot of the pieces of public that I typically hunt, will be a couple hundred acres versus a couple thousand. And so I'm looking for places now where it's like I can get out and just walk. Because I think that's the other thing too, is that, whenever I can cover several thousand acres, it's like, I'm not worried about bumping deer, because I'll just go find another deer. It's like, I'm not too concerned about, oh, I bumped that buck out of his bed. It's like, well, I'll hunt him in that bed and try to bump and dump, and see if he comes back. And if he doesn't, then I'll just move on and find another one. Can't do that whenever you're on small piece, or when you're on small private pieces. You have to be a little bit more cautious. But that's the other part that I kind of like about public, is I can be aggressive like that, because then I can make up for any mistakes that I make. I have a better opportunity to kind of correct them and get on another deer.
The bigger land, like I like hunting. I like going after one animal.
Right.
Like, I hunting one animal, or I have like 2 or 3 that I know I want to hunt. But it kind of, if you're just hunting sign looking for a decent buck, I feel like you can learn more by learning that animal, and see how he works. And then talking about late season, like, even I used to get out, even around here where I live. I used to, if it snowed, I drive the roads before daylight to find a deer track. I'm obsessed with deer tracks and learning. You can learn so much by tracking a deer, but I do like another reason I like the bigger pieces of public land is because you're not limited to, okay, he's on private land. Not if you're hunting that one animal, he's over there. There's nothing you can do about it. But like the public land, the bigger mountains, it's kind of, you could follow him wherever he goes and track him,
Yeah, 100%, man. So let me ask you this, man, because this is one thing I was talking with my buddy Chad about. And we were kind of not going back and forth, but just talking about, how we would prioritize different sign and stuff like that. So, when you put boots on the ground somewhere, like, say you're going to a piece where it's maybe you've hunted it for a year or 2 years, or maybe it's the first year you're going to be on it and you're going to kind of do a scout through, what particular sign, and I know it's probably related to the time of year, but, what type of sign to you is like, sends off your spidey senses that says, all right, good deer, and it's active, and I need to be here. This is the spot I need to be in. What type of things kind of come together for you to kind of have that moment?
Well, I think a lot of times I'll even, like, maybe if it's in the fall, getting into hunting season where you're going to want to hunt an area, maybe you're checking out a new spot, or I like to go in a day or so after the rain and see if, hey, there's deer actively walking the tree. You can actually see their tracks, or like anybody, I look for a big rub. Everybody wants to see that big rub because that just tells you right there what's there. You're always looking for scrapes. Just kind of the general sign. Cover is a big thing. A lot of bucks, if they're going to move during the day, I mean, there's them times where they're just going to be in the middle of open woods. And there's another thing over the years, when you see, I was always hunting when I was younger, I was told hunt a trail. Every time I see a buck along the road, he's just in the middle of the woods. There is no trail.
Right.
So, gravitate towards some cover, maybe topo, but they're going to want to, a mature deer is going to want to have cover close by. And like even now, like this year, it was kind of like, okay, just you kind of get the feel, you become the deer. Just, okay, not in the area, some of the areas I've hunted this year, kind of really flat, doesn't have a lot of topography. It's kind of like, okay, this is some nice cover here, but guys kind of hunt here. Okay, so I'm going to eliminate that. But down in this creek bottom or some hemlock, this is good. I can see a deer being down in here. It has the cover, it has that, it has browse. And okay, I always see does here. We always want to know where does are living because they'll be there and a buck's going to come see them does. So you want to kind of find, it's not like, it's kind of, you just find the does, and just kind of a buck, he'll walk, just like, I'm going to go, like in his head, he's like, I want to go sniff this area. I know does hang out here, or he might go to where they fed at night right before daylight and follow to where their bed is. And then he'll run around in a circle maybe, and then he'll just, so that time of year, he's looking for does. So you want to know where the does are. Right. And you got to have, when some of the bigger bucks, maybe they might be nocturnal. So where is he going to be during the daytime? He's going to get up and move, whether he's, he needs to have cover. But, I'm always looking for big rubs, but I even found some of the bigger bucks, they get older. I'm talking 6, 7. They quit rubbing. Years that I followed them, they rub the whole woods up, and I just think they get to the point where they don't need to. They're not wasting all that energy. Their body's so big, and they're in charge. Just look at me. I don't need to be rubbing. You know what I mean?
Right.
He'll hit scrapes. And 2 years ago, I was hunting a deer. He's 145-inch 8-point, and he had the whole area rubbed up beds. He lived in like a 20-year-old clear cut. I seen him twice. I had my bow back, and he made it through. I said, okay, I'll find him next year. And that's another thing. Deer die or move. It's through the breeding season into the winter. They'll keep that territory, and then come, shed season in the summer. They'll maneuver. It's kind of like the king's dead. I'm gonna, they'll move to better spots or where they, that deer I hunted, he was living there in that clear cut 30-year-old. And I said, next year I got him, right. Because what I did, it was kind of like a few rubs, and I didn't walk around and I could put a couple stands up hunting. And so next year I went back, ain't no sign of him, ain't no rubs in there. I'm like, I know he made it. I got a picture of him late, I didn't find his horns or anything. I said, he's here. So then the following year, I never even knew he existed. I said, I know he's alive. I just don't know where he's at. Then this year he popped up about a half a mile away on my mineral lick this summer, and he's probably, I don't know, 50s, 8-point, or so. But then I scavenged that area like back and forth. I spent hours and hours walking. I said, I just need to find a rub, a clue to tell me where he's at. I was like, and I know I was in his home area because I got other pictures of him through the season, but he ain't rubbing anymore. He don't need to,
Right.
But,
man,
yeah, always looking for that fresh sign. Always looking for scrapes. I mean, but you got to have some plan on having some cover. He got to be able to be comfortable where he's walking, and you want to know where the deer's going to be during daylight. Not. I spent years when I was younger, before cameras, I'd find a rub and I'd sit there, and then after so many years sitting by that rub, it's just like the cover wasn't. He would just, right. Hey, the deer's just going to come walk through the middle of the open woods. We're talking about his life here.
Right.
He got to be secure, and that's another thing. Late season, he'll kind of let his guard down a little bit. He don't need all that cover because he needs the food, and then the hunters are out of the woods.
Right.
But I think having some type of cover around, is
key. Yeah.
Is key. That's for sure. And that's what you need to get mature bucks. They need to have the cover to get away, to get to that age. So like when I'm looking for these public lands that I hunt, these bigger pieces of public lands, I got to either have the cover so they can get away, or some place might have, for some reason, not a lot of pressure, which is possible. We could find a place that doesn't have a lot of pressure so they can survive. Mm-hmm. Or topography, some places are real rugged that keeps them away. So they have to make it to the age to be, and they got to have the cover.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, no, I think just walking. I think the biggest thing for me, Clint, is thinking about it is studying maps, studying square miles. I mean, studying it to where it's like you almost have it in your brain. Like it might take you a few years looking at maps, putting trail cameras to where you're like, I could walk through the woods and know, you'll just know that area. Like, and that's another thing I would touch on is don't leave your hunt up to a hope.
Right.
I don't hope for anything in life. I mean, I'm like, I hope this deer comes, but no. I want to know the deer's going to come by. I want to know what's going on in the area. I want to know where the does are. I want to know where the cover is, know where he might be bedded, know where he's at during the daytime. It's all about knowing. And that's what I was thinking about. Another analogy would be like, I watch Dateline. You ever watch Dateline?
Yeah.
And they, on NBC, that's like the prosecutor, he waits till he has all the information before he goes to court. Yeah. It's not like he got a couple clues. It'd be like you going, I got a rub here, and I think it's here. And it's like, well, let's go to trial. And
right.
Like, I got a rub. It should be like, well, I found a speck of blood. Whoa, is there dead? But no. Like, I'm hoping you'll convict them. You're like, no,
right.
Don't. You got to have all them clues. You got to know. And there's times I've been in a tree where like I couldn't even breathe. I'm like hyperventilating because I knew that whether it's just being in that spot or just sixth sense comes in too. After all them years, I've been in a spot where it's like I've been in a spot where I knew I was going to kill a deer. It was like the time the clock went, I was like, oh man, I've been here 8 hours and I didn't even know because I'm going to kill a deer. And the next day, boom, I killed a deer.
Right.
Just it all comes together, and it's your instincts too. Like you think I follow deer in the winter, I follow them up over mountains, and sometimes I follow a deer and I'm tracking them, and it's like, man, I wouldn't even put a camera. He just walks miscellaneously up over this, left, right. There ain't no rhyme or reason to it. And that's another thing. Like I said, become the deer. Like that's another analogy is to be like a deer. Doesn't like a big mature buck doesn't say, okay, let me think. He ain't rubbing his chin like, okay, I need the wind to be this way. I need a little bit of brush behind me. Oh, I need a little flat. That's what I'm looking for. It's just like he don't think like that. It's just as he's going through the woods, his instincts take over. They look for a place to bed until they find, if it's not a place that they're in often. Mm-hmm. His instincts tell him where to bed, and it's just so many years of doing it. For him to survive, he knows what works, and it's the same thing with me. It's like I know what works. I mean, sometimes I can't really tell you everything. Like I put guys in spot. This is a good spot. This is a good spot, and then maybe I look around. This is why. Or even like doing these podcasts. It's like only recently I started thinking, why is this good? I don't really have all the answers. My instincts tell me.
Right.
All my scout and kind of like this is good. Like I sent my buddy to Iowa to 1 year. Or no, he come out with me, and I was shooting for 170. I put there's a good one over here. Go shoot one. I said, I passed up 2 yesterday over this spot. And he went over and he shot like 145-inch 8 or 10 or something. And then 2 years later, I said, hey, he drew a bow tag, and I've been going out late season. I said, I got a good spot for you. Here, go hunt this spot. And he shot 160-inch.
Right.
But it's put people in these spots. Good. It's going to be a good spot. Like this year, I put a blind up for a guy. This is a good spot. And he didn't hunt it that much. I ain't seeing nothing. I said, I'm telling you, got to be there first week in November. And I showed him the trail cameras. There. You see? I think it comes down to instincts a lot, and always asking when you're walking, scouting, ask your, where's this deer going? If you're following, what's he eating? Just, and it is like the puzzle too. A lot of, you're trying to find that picture on the front of the box, and a lot of it is guesswork. You don't know everything, and I think that's why I like it the most. It's not just, you don't have all the puzzles. You're trying to also put in your own 2 cents of what you learned from other bucks that you hunted.
Yeah.
You know, but I think instincts and just the experience times being out there, and you know, I got piles of cameras, and you just keep minimizing. Oh, you put them on public land. Yeah. What if someone steals them? I said, I just put another one up. You know,
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't care. You know, I really want to know what's going on. I have to know. And that's the biggest thing, is to not hope, but to know
Right.
what's going on. And if you're sitting in a tree and you don't know, or maybe you're sitting in a tree to learn more, that's a different thing. But if you're sitting there to kill it, you want to know as much as you possibly can, like you said. But when you go out, you know, in the new spot, you don't know everything.
Yeah.
You know, but so you walk through it and you jump a deer, and you try to, and that's what's great about it. You're always thinking, trying to figure it out. You know.
Yeah. I mean, you're just taking the pieces as they come, and I think the biggest thing is just like when you're in the timber, be receptive and be aware of your surroundings, right? Because there's all kinds of clues and pieces that are there if you just pay attention to it. And I liked what you said about, you know, knowing versus hoping, because I think, you know, in that it kind of breeds confidence, right? And that's the one thing, like, you know, again, whenever I was out, you know, on that hunt, I didn't know the area really at all, you know, but what I did know is whenever I walked across a really good sign, I looked at it and I was like, I know that's good sign. I know that it's fresh. I know that there's a good buck in here. I'm hunting it, right? And so I would get up into the tree expecting to see the deer. You know what I mean? Like otherwise I wasn't getting into the tree. You know what
You're
I
right.
mean?
You got to believe in yourself. You got to be confident and believe in your, you know, your scouting and all that. You have to believe in your spot.
Yep.
You can't be just like, but then again, you can't believe in it so much where like you just get in a tree and you hunt every. I believe in it. I'm just telling myself, you got to be kind of optimistic and believe, but you got to be realistic, because there's times that if I have the slightest thought that a deer smelled me or that buck that I'm hunting smelled me, I'll move.
Oh yeah.
I won't be there, because you don't know. But
Yep.
that's where you also got to be realistic. You're like, oh, this is a good spot. It's a good spot. But that's what my buddy one year said, man, there's nobody out here. It's a good spot. I said, you're hunting there every day.
Right.
Yeah, but no one else is there. I said, well, you're not seeing it because you're fucking it up. You know what I mean? You're not superhuman. You're just another guy. You know what I mean? And you don't have to make a big move. He might know you're there. It might be 100 yards, 200 yards. I mean,
Right.
one time my buddy was way up in this tree, and then does come by, or no, the buck come by and saw him up in a tree, and it kind of spooked a little bit. He kept hunting that tree.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you move? So the next time he's following the two doe come at 20 yards. He's getting ready, got his bow ready. That buck's following him. He's like, here he comes. He said that buck come, and he made like a half moon out around his stand, out to about 50 yards, then back on the doe. I said, yeah, he knows you're there.
Right.
And that one year, I did the same thing. One year I was in Iowa. I put a stand up. I jumped a deer as a spot I wanted to check. I took my stand. I jumped him. Long story short, I jumped him. It was windy. It was right before dark, and I had my stand with me. And he ran, but I couldn't see where he went. I put a stand up in a tree, and it was windy. And then as soon as I got up in a tree, I was hanging it for the next morning. So I get up in a tree. I look out, and I seen a tail flicker. Like, oh, what was that? Was it that buck? Was he standing there watching me put this stand up? So I got in that stand the next morning, right? Because there was a fence down, and he would jump right there. And that's why I put my seat, jump over that fence all the time. So I get up in the tree, and I sat in that tree till maybe 9, and the wind was hit me right in the face, and upwind I could smell like a rutting buck at like 9 in the morning. I said, and then I'm like, wow, that was a buck upwind of me, you know, out of sight. And then I sat there and I said, you know what? I said, that deer ain't jumping a fence here. He's jumping a fence upwind another 50 yards because he knows I'm in this damn tree. He stood there and watched me.
Right.
You know, that's what I was thinking. I said, it was like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I get down and I go upwind, and 50 yards, and there was another fence down. That's, you know, I put the stand up right before dark. Here he came, and he came, you know, so he knew I was there, and all I had to do was make that move. I didn't get that deer, but anyways, I mean, don't be afraid to move. If you think you messed it up, get down, go move your stand.
And to your point, sometimes you don't have to move far. I mean, that was on that trip. It's like that deer that I missed twice. Like I saw him, whatever it was, I think 5 different encounters I had with him. You know, missed him twice, saw him 3 other times. And the last time he figured out what was going on, and he circled downwind of me, saw me, and smelled me, right? And I was like, he was like 40 yards behind me, and I was like, well, and it was interesting because I watched him learn. Like he was trying to figure out why I hear like a buck sparring down here or fighting down here and a grunt, and then I don't see any bucks, you know. And so after like the 3rd time we had an encounter, he was like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and circle down wind of this area, and he did it up like this logging trail where he had to cross an opening and expose himself. But to him, I guess it was worth it to that 2 seconds of exposure to get downwind so he could see what was going on before he came out, you know, to see what bucks were there. And he saw me, he's winded me, and you know, and he bounded off, and I watched him go away, and I was like, that's probably game over for that guy. And I went and scouted that next day a couple different ridges, and I bumped that buck out of that bed, and then I set up right 30 yards from where that bed was at, and it was only 120 yards from where that deer had seen me the day before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just down the ridge further, and that was all that I needed, was just to make that little bit of a move. You know what I mean? Because I knew I was still in a spot where I was like, the sign was there, the activity was there. I was like, I don't need to leave the area. I was like, I just need to move to where they don't know where I'm at anymore.
You're right. That's a big thing. People, and I've seen it on TV, and the guys, I'm just sitting there. I said, move. I spooked him. I said, move. I mean, sometimes if you have a little doubt in your mind, I don't, move.
Yeah.
You know, like the sign's there, the deer are there. They're going to be there for a reason.
All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd be super appreciative if you do those 2 things for us. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Gumleaf USA Boots, Obsession Bows, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.